Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our Tuesday Takeover for Racial and Social Justice. In honor of Women's History Month, the Women's Rights Committee was given the privilege of hosting 2 events this month. So this is our second and last of that series. And today we will be talking about other issues impacting CTA women during COVID. Uh, in just a moment, I will have our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, but first and foremost, before anything else, we would like to take the time to do our land acknowledgement. We want to start today's event with a land acknowledgement. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in the past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. The land that I am in is the traditional land of the Hokopa people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have been their stewards throughout the generations. May we honor their enduring presence on this land by committing ourselves to equity, human rights, and racial and social justice. Please take a moment to acknowledge the people and lands you are currently occupying. If you do not know, take note to research that for the future, and that there will be a link provided for you within the chat that will make that easy for you to look up. And we ask and we encourage you to enter that information within the chat, so therefore we can acknowledge the land on which you reside on. Thank you for that. Moving on, as I mentioned before, the Women's Rights Committee are hosting these 2 events. Pardon me. And my name is Yuri Camacho. I have the honor of being the chair for the CTA's Women's Rights Committee. The Women's Rights Committee seeks to promote women's involvement and role in the labor movement, women's history, and women's rights. As I mentioned earlier, today's Takeover Tuesday will be focused on other issues impacting women during COVID. Let's go ahead and begin with introducing our wonderful panelists. Beginning first, panelists, if you can just please briefly introduce yourself, name, school district, your position at your district, number of years working, and anything else you feel you would like to share. We'd love to know more about you. Beginning with Debbie.
Hi, my name is Debbie Chong. I am a preschool special educator from Ocean View School District. It is my 16th year teaching, my 8th year in special education, and I am the Racial Equity Affairs Director for my local, as well as I just was elected to be the at-large for Orange County Service Center.
Right on. Congratulations on that, Debbie. Thank you. Next, Maripaz.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting. My name is Maripaz Berlin. I'm originally from the Philippines, but I live in Santa Cruz. I'm a first and second grade teacher in the Oak Grove School District in San Jose, and I'm also the president of my local Oak Grove Educators Association. This is my 14th year. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you. Moving on next to Vanessa.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I put my AirPods in. Sometimes that messes up the audio. We're good? Okay. My name is Vanessa Robinson. I am from Monterey County, live in Salinas. I teach in South Monterey County at Greenfield Union School District. Within my local, I am the vice president of our local chapter. I am the chair of the Women's Equity team, the women's chair for the Central Coast Service Center. I'm also a state council delegate for our area, as well as re-elected to NEA as the representative for Region G. I have been teaching for officially 7 years, but have been in education for about 11 years as a long-term sub, and a bunch of other cool things within the district. And I just got my second COVID shot today. So I am fully vaccinated, and that is such a good feeling.
Right on. No, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for all that you do, both inside and outside the classroom, taking on those additional leadership roles. We greatly appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and move on to our questions, starting with the first one. It's a heavy question. What are the challenges you're facing during COVID-19? Right? Easy question to answer, I'm sure. We'll go ahead and start with you, Debbie. What are the challenges you are facing during COVID-19?
I feel like foremost, I feel like safety was a huge issue. I think that because we teach in special education, uh, it was really hard to do what we do virtually. And when we surveyed our members, a lot of them said, we want to come back. So when we were given the option to in September, we did. And as excited as I was to see my students again, I was super nervous because, that COVID was, the numbers were still pretty high. And I think right after the holidays, they really went up. And trying to balance, am I keeping these kids safe as well as my family? Like, now it's not just me that I'm concerned about. Am I going to come home and infect my family? Am I going to infect, some kid's grandma? And just trying to make sure that we did the best for our kids. And I think also just trying to balance what we were doing before and all the restrictions that were put on us when we came back. Because I think that when everybody said, hey, let's open back up, let's do this, they didn't realize, okay, but yeah, now we have to add in all this extra time for making sure that we wash our hands like every 15 minutes and that children aren't sharing food and all the stuff that we used to do that used to be okay, like sharing toys or, sitting next together, having a friend take your hand and go play with you, like all these things that just went out the window. And it was like, I don't know how to do this anymore. So I think that trying to push past that discomfort and say, I can still do this, it's going to be different, was my biggest issue. And then beyond that, I think the work-life balance was also a thing, especially during crisis learning. When we closed down in the spring, we were like, I don't know how to virtually teach preschool. I just don't. And so I think that trying to do that from home and then realizing that I didn't have a strict time of like, okay, well, you got to pack up and go home because you're already home. There were days when I would look up and say, oh, it's midnight. I have to go to bed now so I can do this again tomorrow. Did I eat today? And just those little things where I was like, oh, okay, I'm forgetting all the self-care, but I was just trying to hold it together for my students, for my families. And so it literally was very much crisis teaching.
No, real talk. You hit a lot of points I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. Maripaz, same question. What were some of the challenges, or what are some of the challenges you're facing during COVID?
Yes, there are. Yeah, they still exist. Just looking back when I saw this question earlier, I was thinking about the evolution of what has changed from March 13th to now. And we've gone a full year now, and it had me thinking back, like the same thing with Debbie, when we first went virtual. It was, what do we do? How do we do that? How am I going to teach the students this way? And so it was really challenging to learn to teach that way. How do you convert all of that? So it was creating content that was challenging, capturing student work online last spring, learning to and having a regularity to communicating with families, because they were in the dark too. I wanted to comfort them and let them know that things were going to be okay, even though I wasn't sure. We thought we were coming back in 3 weeks, and ended up, we're still virtual right now. So during the spring, I also ran for president of my local, and I won. So that was a whole campaign of virtual virtual campaigning, which was a whole other level. It was weird, but after that, it was bargaining during the summertime. So during the summers, usually when we have some downtime, there was no downtime. We were bargaining and trying to figure out what's going to happen come August. Are we still going to be in the same position? And what can we do? Because it was crisis teaching. And then we came to the fall, and we wanted to make it different and look for ways to make it better. We wanted to do that for students. We take pride in what we are. You know, we're educators. We want to do the best we can for our students. So technology presented its own challenges. Training and getting everybody on board and how to do that was challenging. Everybody had to learn new things, take professional development, have all kinds of resources that we weren't used to using, which is kind of ironic because in my school district, we were always trying to find out how to invest or how to integrate technology in education. And now we have to the nth degree. And then to the present time, I do want to touch base with that. With right now, we're trying to do the same thing and how to bring back students and teachers safely now that we're getting vaccinated. I got my second one too today, which I'm so stoked about. I'm so happy. But we're trying to do that too, and we're trying to address the same issues, how to do that, especially with certain populations like our special ed population. One of the things that has been a challenge during this whole time, in addition to school though, is that racism hasn't taken a break. We're still, it's now that we're kind of stopped in our homes, that's still happening, and that continues to happen. And now we need to, the challenge has been like, how do you fight that? How do you find ways to address it in this way? How do we do that? And I know in the summertime there were Black Lives Matter marches, and you know, people were masked up, you know, to do that. And the same thing that's happening now with our API community. How do we organize and how do we gather ourselves? We usually, that's what we do. We do it in person. And now that's a challenge. And so I think our certain equity teams I belong to, we're doing a book club where we can kind of seek that with each other, have that kind of camaraderie. And it's been very challenging to connect. And so I don't know what we would do if we didn't have social media because or technology. How would we do that? We would be even more isolated. So that's been part of the challenge too, is how to still continue that work, that anti-racist work remotely when we're so far away from each other. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing up all that. And on a personal note, I do want to take a moment and give my thoughts and prayers and condolences to those who have lost loved ones during, especially the API community that's been targeted, unfortunately. And as we all know, we need to stop the hate enough, right? And hopefully that's not what we mean when we go back to normal, right? That's not the part that we want to continue. We want to learn from it, grow from it, and stop the hate. Thank you for bringing that up. Vanessa.
Oh, I wanted to.
Oh, go ahead, Mari.
No, you just brought up a really good point. I'm sorry. That we don't want to go back to the normal, you know, and what people keep saying is normal. Now that we have been able to step back a little bit and see where gaps are, see where we need to, where the cracks are, let's not go back to that. Let's find a way to create something new, have different conversations, have different things to, you know, in our community that we can use. Anyway, that you just inspired that. I was just thinking about that when you said that. Thank you.
Right on. Vanessa, same question. So what are challenges that you came across during COVID?
Yeah, Maripa's perfect segue into everything I was kind of recapping in my mind over the past year. And like, as our sister Tanya Jaco says, we now know normal was never enough, right? was never enough. It meant we were underfunded. It meant there was, like you mentioned, gaps everywhere, and many of our students weren't being served. And what happened, like you mentioned, we all went into shutdown. I'm lucky that in our district we have phenomenal women as leaders. So a lot of our original shutdown was, we felt pretty secure where we were. We immediately jumped into a reopening task force. That, though, in and of itself was a challenge to get educators and voices on those task forces while we had teachers who were still just trying to figure out how to survive until June. And then immediately after, the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd amplified so much for so many educators. I know myself, pre-pandemic, always had a strong focus on anti-racist literature for my students. And we were actually right in the middle of Ghost Boys, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a fictional story of the Tamir Rice shooting 12-year-old boy playing with a toy gun in Chicago, shot by white policemen, right? And here I am in the middle of trying to just pick up the pieces of distance learning, bringing this back to my students full circle in a virtual world of how everything we're reading about is playing out in front of them. Not being able to, I feel like, emotionally support my students in that space was extremely challenging. So what did I do? Against probably tons of advice from my district or anyone else who's talking about safety, went straight to the streets. And that was an outlet for me, but it also was a way for me to prove to my students that we're not just going to read literature about how to do anti-racist work or how to change narratives about different races or systemic racism, but we're actually going to do something about it. So the entire summer was a complete struggle from myself, just trying to figure out, you know, as a Black woman especially, kind of kicked into gear always, is like, how do we solve problems for others? How do we do this work for everyone? How can I step up? How can I do more, right? So I ran for vice president of my local too. So like Maripaz mentioned, that was a virtual campaign. I was actually like semi-new to my district too. So that was like, oh, how is this gonna turn out? I ran for city council in my city because I was just like, it's about time we have actual representation and people who are not afraid to talk about the tough topics, right? Like, it's time to amplify all of our issues. There's no better time than now, and all change starts locally. So really just that challenge for me was, how do I bring the voice and my passion and all of these things that I've worked kind of my whole career for to the forefront now, right? As we have a pedestal, you know, there's rhetoric out there of people capitalizing off of movements and moments, but in my opinion, it's like, if you can get up there and do it the correct way and do it justice, like, by all means, be my guest. Let's do this, right? And so then I guess me throwing myself into that and kind of facing that challenge head on, coming back into the school year, really thinking about now what. So everything I learned over the summer and all of these new ahas I had, how do I bring that back into the classroom, and how do I continue to advocate for other educators to do that across the state even? How do we use our platform as anti-racist CTA educators, right, to empower other educators who might not feel ready to have the conversation to just have the conversation? Because coming into a new school year, I felt like there was no better time than to do that. Luckily, you know, locally, I have my partner, Angela DeRamos, in crime, and we actually did a Takeover Tuesday for Let's Talk About Race, right, with Francisco Ortiz and Erica Zamora, Karen Ridley, and before school even started, just jumped right in. Like, this is how you can deliver this, right? I remember receiving emails from credential program students who stumbled upon the React website and saw our talk and were like, I'm so excited that we can enter into a field where there's people who are willing to take on that challenge. So yeah, that work just continues throughout the year, right? It's March. I think still continuing to find literature and ways to connect with our students virtually that delivers this message. Like Maripaz says, racism did not disappear. And if anything, we're fighting two pandemics now. Without everybody having the outlets to mask or, I guess, keep busy with other things to avoid what actually does go on in this country, a lot of it's been amplified. It's not that it's existing because the pandemic's here. It's like you're seeing it because you can't avoid it anymore, right? It's there. It's the only thing to look at now. And so I think all of us are just really coming to a reckoning as individuals and educators, and our responsibility and role with students within our communities is like, what is our role here? And so I think March 2021, I'm still taking that challenge full head on.
No, right on. I appreciate all of you talking about the different aspects of what our job entitles, and I'm saying job very loosely, and then trying to recreate that now in a virtual space, right? On a personal note, I want to add just one other part as far as personally what I've challenged, and unfortunately, I know over 500,000 other families and loved ones have had to deal with during COVID, and that is the trauma of losing someone to COVID. I know you ladies are familiar with my story, but I lost my mother in March. And dealing that on top of everything else is, I'm still working through it. And one of the things that I know, at least recently, I just recently can say I'm starting to heal. Because in the past 4 years, I had a government, or at least the head of government, who didn't acknowledge that. And I can't even begin to tell you just simple acts, just with our recently elected president, honoring those who were lost to COVID. I felt seen for the first time. I felt my mom recognized for the first time, and just other things that are following. And then triggers, when students come to me saying that their families are sick or they've lost someone to COVID, I go right back to that spot where I was in June, losing my mom all over again and feeling those challenges. So, but at the same time, which kind of segues to our next question, silver lining, right? I always say that, in one of my darkest moments of my life, I've never felt so loved. And that goes with the support systems that are in place within our, society, organization, family, and so forth. So that leads into our next question. How are you finding support during this time? And I'll go backwards, and I'm going to start with you, Vanessa. How are you finding support during COVID?
I think I kind of mentioned it in what I was speaking about, just to reiterate the kind of the names that I've mentioned, like Angela Durano, able to have a connection with somebody who you trust, right? As a woman, another woman who's kind of pioneered the way in certain paths as well. And that can go for any organization, that can go for your school site as well. But one thing, I guess, what I learned is during COVID, because again, in my family, as well as you mentioned, we're all dealing with trying to keep our family safe and trying to avoid these really tough situations. I haven't been extremely close with my family, not in the sense that we don't have a connection, but we haven't spent time. So my typical or my usual support system, right, which would be my aunt's house or my nana's house, and being able to talk about all my crazy ideas and kind of get that fuel that I need to keep going on, is missing. It honestly is. So the other people who are in this virtual world with us, that's how I can say I really have gotten my support, is that my family may not be on Zoom all day, but my coworkers are. And so it's really easy to hop on to a Zoom meeting with them and just like let it out. Some of my good friends who live in like Texas and LA, who we probably would talk on the phone or through text every once in a while, we're having like regular FaceTime chat. Like FaceTime's always been around, but when I think pre-pandemic, like we used it to like show each other something and we didn't sit and like connect. But now it just feels normal. Now it feels like it's what we're supposed to do. And the other side of that is I'm getting so much more from these conversations than I would have anticipated. And so throughout the time, it became, we normalized those kind of things. And so it's been friends, it's been colleagues, it's been CTA sisters and brothers, and all of us just understanding that we have a shared struggle more than ever. I mean, we always have, but right now we've added 19 more struggles to it, times 10. The fact that we all are accustomed to gathering in this sense, I feel like it's like a CTA conference like every weekend, which, right, if you've been to CTA conferences, you know that feeling you get after the weekend. You're like, yes, I'm so recharged. I'm still revitalized. And those were like few and far in between. Now it's like all the time. I can't imagine what I would do without a group of people who understood what we're going through at the time and were ready to connect and deliver support, whether we know we're supporting each other or not, but just show up in the same capacity. And so just staying connected to the people who have, you know, the same struggles or the same interests as you, right? If it's somebody who's not in education right now, seeing this on YouTube, or somebody who's a new educator, just reaching out to anybody who you know is kind of going through some things. I promise you it will benefit you more than you thought it would going into the conversation.
No, absolutely. Maripaz, same question. How are you finding support during COVID?
Similar to what Vanessa mentioned, I was thinking that, you know, this past year, especially when we just did shelter in place, we all kind of stayed in our homes. We're still in our homes, but we have, you know, I'm the one who ventures out to go grocery shopping, and but I haven't seen my mom in over a year, so we're waiting for that, you know, for her to get vaccinated, and I haven't seen my brother in over a year also. So those have been challenges. So I think with the isolation, it's more, for me, it's been a real conscious effort to maintain the relationships, my relationships with my family, my relationships with my friends. I found a real joy and solidarity with my own chapter, with my OGA tribe, and with my PAC tribe, my Pacific Asian American Caucus tribe. And this, you know, CTA, this is it. Usually though, in our world, I mean, pre-pandemic, we had these platforms like TikTok or we still do, and Facebook and Instagram, and good TikTok dancing, Yuri, just a little plug for you. And we have these platforms, and I think the whole world is just kind of out there. And sometimes there is a tendency for individuals, you know, even for me too, to kind of just go inward, because it's so much, you know, with the social media, the news. But during this time, because we're kind of in this inverted world where we're kind of holed up, that these platforms have become like bridges, you know, where I check in. There's all kinds of groups in Facebook, where there's a president group, there's a CTA group, there's the CTA equity group, there's a state council group. And so there's these like little rooms in social media where it feels like, hey, those are my people in there. I know those people in there. And that's been really helpful. And it's been grounding, you know, and this has been a very difficult time. I find it challenging because I like being around people. I like seeing people, and my days look very much the same. I was thinking about this the other day, like why does it feel that way, where it's like all the days look the same? And I realized that usually my days are punctuated by, oh, I had coffee with a friend, or I went to go get my nails done, which I haven't done. My nails are horrendous, but the weekend I went to get my nails done, or I went window shopping, I went to Marshall's. None of those has happened. I went to go visit my mom, or my mom and I went on a trip. None of that has happened. Every day has been the same. It's working. Saturdays I make a list, go shopping, but then there's Sunday, a little reading, but it's not punctuated by the things that we normally would have, you know, or conferences. We haven't been to conferences. Conferences has been like the home edition. And it's been great, but not the same. Can't hug anybody. You're not staying in a hotel. You don't get your drink tickets. It's different. And I think so having these little communities on social media and those platforms has been really nice. So, and then of course, you know, family and friends, it kind of help ground you to, this is temporary. We have each other. Let's connect on the phone. I've been talking to friends on the phone for hours. And so that's been supportive. I really appreciate that part.
Thank you for that. No, and I completely agree. Debbie, same question. How are you finding support during COVID?
Someone just reminded me today, actually, that the last thing that we did before we shut down last year was the CTA conference. And so, to echo what Maripaz and Vanessa said, I do feel like educators need educators because at the end of the day, you could go to your family, you could go to your friends and say, hey, today was really frustrating, this happened. And you might come up with that resistance of, well, I mean, you're an educator, didn't you sign up to do this? And it's like, well, yeah, maybe I did, but maybe I didn't. I don't think any of us decided that, mid-year to just shift our gears and learn how to do everything virtually. None of us could have really seen this coming. And I think that having other people in your life that say, yeah, I'm struggling too, or I can help you, or I can at least just listen to you vent, and it's going to be okay, and we're going to get through this, or maybe I can connect you with somebody who can help you, or even just holding space for you is so important. I think that with so much of my family being in the medical profession, uh, being able to not lean on that as heavily has been tough, but I do think that it has been, my union family, and it has been my, my work family that have held me together. All the virtual game nights and all the we even like put a little group together and started taking art classes together on Sundays. And yeah, finding a new hobby throughout this that you can do socially distance, I think was definitely one of those things that held me together too. And yeah, just finding people who are interested in what you are interested in, or want to help you, or want to receive help from you is so important. And I think as educators, we are a helping field, and so we are a great resource for each other, whether it is professionally or personally, emotionally. You guys have really been there. Even some of the people on this panel right now, honestly, I think all of you have at some point um, been a great support for me. So thank you for that.
No, I completely agree. I was thinking the same thing as you said it, Debbie. Everybody in this space has supported me through the pandemic in one form or another. Um, I wanted to echo about what Maripa said in regards to the communities on social media. One of the communities that Debbie invited me when I was in the middle of what I just call a dark space in my life, a simple little group called Three Good Things. And people just post three good things that they're grateful for. And again, it just really helped. Even when I wasn't posting, even when I wasn't in a space to share, just reading people's three good things, whether it was three big things or just, great weather, walk through the park. And yeah, so I appreciate all that you guys are sharing. Debbie, you touched upon earlier in regards to balance between the work and the home life, which is a segue to our next question. How are you taking care of yourself, right? You all kind of touched upon it, but I remember Debbie mentioning it in that first question. So I'll start with you, Debbie. Again, the question is, how are you taking care of yourself?
Oh, I am a big old workaholic. So work-life balance was hard. And honestly, I was that person who would be like dying with the flu and still come to work and be like, this is just easier than putting a sled plan together. So what's been really crazy about this year is that when we were having that surge on top of a surge where it was like, there's no hospital beds, that was when I was like, okay, I got to be real about this. What am I doing? And I actually had to have like a real talk with my doctor and be like, should I be working? This, like, I didn't at the beginning of the year, even though they were like, oh yeah, you should go see a doctor and just make sure. And I just got back in my classroom. I was like, we have to do this for the kids. But then when it came to, ooh, the numbers are too high, I was like, are they gonna have a hospital bed for me? This is important. And so when I talked to my doctor, he was like, you probably shouldn't be working. And so I have been on leave for the past 2 months, and it has been so crazy to try to like just hand over my classroom to someone that I really, really, really do trust, but like to have gone from working so much on it and to just kind of drop it and walk away, which of course I haven't done. I'm still kind of feeding information to my assistants and to myself about how to run my class. But I'm like super excited to go back next week because I finally got my vaccine too. But yeah, I think that realizing that, yeah, I do have to take care of myself first. And that whole idea of you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can put it on anyone else. It was like, it had to hit me over the head pretty hard, you know? It had to get to the point where I was like, am I really not considering the fact that I can't teach anymore if I'm dead? So I think that taking that step back and making sure that even if I am working, that I'm taking time to hang out with my family that I live with, and to make sure that I am sleeping and that I'm feeding myself, and just creating those good habits that I can take with me next week when I go back to school, so that I'm not like forgetting to eat or sleep or breathe or do any of the other things. I think that a lot of it takes practice. You have to keep, chaining those habits with the habits you already have, so that they stay when everything else starts falling off. So yeah, I think just being very intentional about what you wanted to do, and like, I think for me, creating like scheduling things and putting things on my calendar, whether it's just, oh, I just want to go to the farmer's market today and pick up some really good veggies, or you know what, today I'm going to put on a face mask, stuff like that, like that I would never have put on a calendar, but just being so intentional about it that like, I'm gonna do this, it's on the calendar, I wrote it down, I think was super important for me to like hold myself accountable.
No, thank you for that. No, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. Maripaz, same question. How are you taking care of Maripaz?
Thank you. When Debbie mentioned, hobbies and things, I actually took up needle pointing during this time because I thought, what can I do with my hands right now? Because I need to do something with my hands, because sometimes it's just, the struggle is real. Like, so I snack. That's how I take care of myself. Um, I plan. It's like there's so much out of our control sometimes that, especially during this year, I don't know that everybody is conscious of it, but we are experiencing trauma. This is, these are things that are not what we've been used to, and it's this kind of low level ongoing. When I go outside, I realize, when I put on my mask, that I'm clenching my jaw when I'm in the grocery store. And I realized that the other day, and I thought, my jaw hurts. Why? And how do I take care of myself? That's one way I cope, is just like having some good snacks at home. I do plan like our family meals. I didn't do that before. And I'm the one that goes before, my husband and my son, they stay home, and I'm the grocery shopper. So I do that planning, and that helps me figure out, okay, this is what the week's going to look like. Do one shopping giant load of food. I exercise. I reach out to my friends, and it is intentional, like Debbie said, that is. Before it was probably like you just take it for granted they're going to be there, but I really have come to appreciate these conversations with friends, with my mom. It's really grounding when you get kind of caught up in the chaos of the day. It's nice to talk to somebody who is not a part of that, and I appreciate that part. I do, if I'm not focused, or if I'm into different projects, or there's a problem at work, or I tend to kind of think about it and ruminate. And sometimes that's not the best thing because your brain is just working all the time. So I try to do things that will take my mind off of that to kind of relax it a little bit. So sometimes that's a nice walk, you know, just get yourself out into a different environment. Sometimes I'll do a hard workout and it's painful. And so that will make me stop thinking about what I was worried about. But anything that kind of relaxes my brain to so that it can kind of rest and refocus for the, you know, for the next problem or thing to work on. Because it's really hard to just keep going and going and going and going. It's exhausting and I think it's gonna affect all of us in some way that we can't see right now. But we're experiencing trauma and there's going to be a reckoning at some point. So I think it behooves us to kind of try to take care of ourselves and slow down, you know, and make those intentional, um, uh, make our communication intentional with family and friends. So that's been helpful for me. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Vanessa, how do you take care of yourself?
So I like dread this question, but I also love that, like, I think all three of our responses to this are extremely different. So I think I don't take care of myself, and that's a huge problem. But I think it's really honest to talk. I think it's important to talk about it and be honest about it, because I think that I was always that person who kind of cringed at like self-care because I'm like, what do you mean? I'm fine, I'm good. And I think the reason I cringed at it before the pandemic was because I don't know how to take care of me. Like I don't really know how to take care of me. Um, my personality is like Debbie mentioned, educators taking care of others, we're of service to others. And on top of my career choice, that's just who I am as a person. I think in general, culturally too, as Black women, we just naturally take care of everybody. Our grandmothers taught us that, our aunties taught us that. And those kind of things in a time like this can be really damaging. So not even just the fact that I'm a workaholic, the social issues that arose when the pandemic started kicked me into overdrive of working more. Um, not only did I feel a strong drive to work for my students, but just for, you know, my people and everyone else and for the country and for the city. And so it was like work, work, work. And then we kind of never restricted staff at our site until around December, like Debbie mentioned, when the numbers really started to rise. And as the union VP, I said, you know, it's just best if I work from home because I had been going to my classroom, no students, but that in and of itself kept me in the sense that I wasn't in where Madi Paz is saying days were the same. I had punctuation in my days because I would get up, I would go to my classroom, everything still kind of felt normal. And then since January, I've been here. And this is the first time though that I felt like I've had to reckon with what am I doing? Like things just started snowballing. The same things Debbie was mentioning. Like now, you know, teaching in Greenfield is 45 minutes from my home. So before it started getting dark, I needed to get on the road and I needed to get home. That's not the case here. So I'm literally sometimes in this chair till 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm always available to everybody and anyone who needs me. And I'll be completely honest, since January till now, March, I've gained 20 pounds. So it all, like when we talk about it just like compiling, and it took me 366 days for it to all just come crashing. It's so true. Everything Madi Paz is saying, I'm like over here wanting to be like, because I wasn't doing any of it. And it's just what you ladies have just mentioned is so true. But I feel like I have to give the other side of that anybody listening shouldn't feel bad for maybe not having that clarity on how to take care of yourself, because it's normal. Again, regardless of your profession or your role in your family, it comes, I think, as often as not, that a lot of us don't pay attention to ourselves. And so it took a friend to be like, hey, do you want to join this like Biggest Losers challenge? Where I'm like, sure, I probably should. It'll help me get out of this chair. And that was the first time I got on a scale, and I was like, whoa, because you don't realize these things, you know? Like I was going to my chiropractor, so I felt a little loose, but like, no, So I'm happy to report though, last week I joined a boot camp. I cannot sit down normally because still gotta like, oh, so I'm feeling that burn Marty Paz was talking about. It's the first time I've used a planner since last March, Debbie. So I'm taking heed to your advice as well too. But even again, just after 2 weeks, like I feel better. It was hard to do it. I still fail. I'm not gonna lie. I tried intermittent fasting. Yeah, right. Give me cheese at 10 o'clock. Like that's what I want right now. And it's okay to give into those indulgences too. But I think one thing I will take out of this year is that maybe I don't know how to take care of myself 100%, right? But I need to check in with myself like a lot more because it's gonna take some time for me to undo what I've done these last couple months to myself, but it's okay. Again, I'm glad I have supports like this. And I think that all of us women need this kind of space to be honest and open and just kind of, you know, hold no judgment. But take notes. I'm taking notes. I'm going to put my face mask on my schedule for this weekend, Debbie. Yeah, all that good stuff. So I'm still learning how to take care of myself. And I think that's okay. And I'm at least happy with where I am today with my journey of learning.
Oh, right on, real talk. And I appreciate you saying about taking notes because every time you see me look down, that's what I've been doing. I was like, I like the planner idea, the workout. I don't like the idea, but it needs to happen. So yeah, I hear you. Y'all know I TikTok. That's that's how I take care of me. Started out doing it for the students. I have high school kids. I figured if nothing else, I can catch them on TikTok. And next thing I know, I realized it was a great escape for me. It was my little world away from the world. My past to be silly and funny unapologetically, not worry about anything else. So no, I appreciate all that you're sharing. So we're gonna wrap up with our last question. What are you anxious about and what are you excited about as we reopen our schools? So again, what are you anxious about and what are you excited about? Feel free to do it whichever order you think is more appropriate for you. We'll start with Vanessa and work our way back to Debbie. So Vanessa, what are you anxious and what are you excited about as we reopen our schools?
Man. With the lens now of being first-time vice president during a pandemic, that might say a lot about what I'm anxious about. But what I get, because what I'm anxious about is really making sure that I serve my members. Like that has me up all night, every night. That's on my mind all the time. It's rewarding though. It's very rewarding to be able to be that voice for them, to feel like I can advocate for them at probably one of the highest levels in our district. We do have a lot of support from our administrators in our district as well, but I know even the smallest thing during this time can feel like a large ask from teachers, and especially new teachers or veteran teachers that are new to the district. I think everything that we're experiencing as educators is something like none of us have been through, regardless, right? Because of the pandemic. But then even like work conditions or scheduling or things that, you know, even administrators don't realize, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Because like I tell my members all the time too, is like, this is the first time and maybe the last time that we can tell our administrators they don't know what we do. Because like a lot of our administrators may have been educators, right? Well, when I was in the classroom, well, how about you were never in a virtual one? So it is what it is. And this is what we're telling you. And so like, that's a great bargaining, right? That's like a really good bargaining edge, right? But I still know that that's not enough sometimes to empower my members to advocate for themselves. So I am super willing to take that on for them. But in the virtual world, gathering and organizing and communicating can feel so disjointed. You feel like you've crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, and you've surveyed everybody and you've got everybody's opinions. And then it's like, oh, totally left out like this group. And we thought we made like a really good decision. So those things really weigh on you. I feel like me in general, we're moving into our MOU negotiation tomorrow for our reopening. We're still having lots of discussions about what that would even look like, who comes back, how do we phase it in? And so I feel like it's never ending of like concerns coming in, which is fine. I'm open to them. I'm welcoming them. I'm actually shooting to my site reps. Can you please ask what do they think about this? What do they think about this? Get them to me. Hurry, quick, fast, you know? So those things give me a lot of anxiety, but I think that the way that it is also exciting is that I do feel like this extra drive to get things done correctly is going to make sure that we all are able to come back into a safe, well negotiated, and reasonable setting. So the same things that give me anxieties give me excitement about coming back, because I feel like we're doing it the right way. I feel like we're taking time. I feel like we're collaborating effectively. David Goldberg actually just presented at the administrative circle with my superintendent. Like, she asked, hey, who from the state can I get to come talk to a bunch of superintendents and administrators about reopening? And I'm like, our VP, I'll shoot it to him. I don't know if he'll say yes, but duh, David said yes. And David came and he rocked it, and he totally stood up for all CTA educators in front of the face of superintendents and administrators. But it's like that kind of collaboration is how we make our spaces that we're returning into less anxious. And so again, the same things that give me anxiety give me hope for the next, when we come back, it'll be like 8 to 6 weeks. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna just shoot in there, and the thing, because I know we're running out of time, how my CTA siblings can help us out, right? It's continuing that collaboration about how you guys are doing things, like how districts are working with their labor partners. What are your MOUs saying that is creatively, that's servicing everybody? We just have a new unit modification where we've just recently, during the pandemic, added our speech pathologists, our counselors, and our school psychologists, right? And so we're still negotiating what that looks like to join us, but then we have to represent them in this new MOU too. So I'm constantly texting like other district, VPs or presidents. What is the language in your guys' contract about that? Obviously, we have our staffers to help us with that too, but like kind of just trying to put a more human educator level to it. So constantly reaching out to my CTA siblings. Maripa is probably going to be hitting you up in the next couple days now about your guys' too, and just, all of that. But I guess if my last words would be taking care of our people, whether they're our members, our brothers and sisters in real life, our cultural families, our allies, our solidarity with our AAPI community members, and our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, making sure everybody's represented, everybody's needs are met. And I think through that work, we can have a lot to look forward to, not only just at the end of this school reopening, but like way to stick it to them next fall, right? All the work that we've done this year is not going to go away in June. We are just going to come back harder in August, like with more clarity as a union and as leadership and as collaborative partners, ready to kind of like revitalize and revolutionize the way we do education, right? So that's exciting.
Oh, right on. Good stuff. Maripas, what are you anxious about and what are you excited about as we reopen our schools?
Oh my gosh, everything that Vanessa just said. That is what we're going through. That is something that does keep me up, tossing and turning sometimes. I want to do it right by our members, and we have put out surveys and we've invited input and collaboration, and I think that is helping, so that the more people that we can engage and activate during this time so that they feel they are part of the process is important to me. But I think it's important for the health of my local. That's what makes us strong, that's how you feel like you're a part of something, that you belong to something, is that your voice is valued. And so the anxiety comes from how to meet all those needs, because there are different needs, right? And but we're trying to figure that out by listening, by having listening groups, and having our site reps share. Same thing that Vanessa, that you're getting from your members too. I think that's important. And we all know that sometimes with union stuff, we don't always get 100% participation. You might get 50 if you're lucky, 50%. And so that's always been the struggle. I think the difference now is that we're talking about the health and safety of members, and there is more interest in that, and the stakes are higher. Not that salary isn't high or healthcare isn't high, but this is pretty high on the list. And that's why I've been grateful too that we can move cautiously through this process. I know that I'm in an area where there have been some school districts that have been imposed upon by school board and their district to reopen or to return to in-person sooner while that we were in purple. Like, what's the logic in that? I feel grateful and I'm filled with gratitude that we have been able to move slowly. And what I'm excited about, I could just echo what Vanessa said. I'm excited about that thing too, is that we are getting participation, that we're going to gain more momentum so that for the future, for going into August, we're going to have even more people engaged. I'm excited because our members have learned new tools of instruction that they can use from here on out. You know, these are things we can carry throughout. I'm excited that meetings don't have to be in person, that we can conduct meetings, you know, virtually, and you'll still have participation, but we're going to be able to do that safely. And I'm excited about seeing people again. I've heard from other teachers who have seen their students, and it brings them joy, and it kind of erases some of those fears. Because I know it's out there, I know it's real, but we're social creatures. I think it's, for me at least, I like having that personal connection, and I think that's gonna. I'm excited to see that again. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess. There's like some bitterness and some anxiety in the beginning, but I'm hoping that there's some sweetness in the end.
Oh, for sure. Debbie, same question. What are you anxious about and what are you excited about as we reopen our schools?
Definitely all of the things that Maripaz and Vanessa said, for sure. I'm a little anxious because I know that there is just a ton of work ahead of us as far as like how do we negotiate this reopening, how do we get all the kids back safely, and how do we continue to serve the kids who aren't coming back, because we do have a large amount of students who've already expressed interest in being in a virtual academy setting next year. And I think that I am the most excited about, you know, just being able to interact with the kids again. And I'm excited for even just the future of education, because I know that this year has changed us and it's made us so much stronger. And I think that it's proven, whether we're loved or not, that as a profession, that that we're capable of so much, and I'm really, really proud of all we've accomplished in the midst of a pandemic. So I think that that's what excites me, to see where we go from here.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to echo that last comment, Debbie, because that's how I'm feeling. I mean, I'm anxious of what it's going to look like after pandemic, right? But like you said, I'm excited about how we're just going to continue to shine even further, right? We as educators have definitely proven beyond any doubts that we always rise to the challenge, right? We literally, as I know, and that's something that I constantly saw people post on Facebook, we literally were creating the plane as we were flying it. And so I'm that much more honored to be a colleague among all of you. On that note, this concludes our Takeover Tuesday. And thank you, panelists, for joining us. This was amazing and sharing your experiences and stories. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.